Hello and welcome to another live show. How's everybody doing today? Let me know in the chat, where are you watching from? And while you're putting stuff in the chat, we're going to talk about building student relationships, as I will be going back to school this Friday. So this is top of mind for me. And while you guys are filling in the comments, Colorado from Margarita. Awesome. While you guys are filling in the comments, let me just show a quick intro and then we'll go ahead and get started. Marika is from Michigan. That's where I grew up, Marika. Joanne is here from Greenville, Pennsylvania. Okay, I'll be right back after our intro. And we're back. And Elodie is from Canada. Which part? West, east, or middle? And Leah's from Bethel, Washington. Awesome, awesome. Great to have all of you here today. Hopefully this will be an interesting topic for all of you. Ontario. Awesome. East side. And for those who don't know, I am just outside of Sacramento, California. So it's just about just a little after 3:30 here. Greg is from Texas. Awesome. Okay, let's go ahead and get started on our topics. So today we're going to be talking about building student relationships. And I want you guys to participate. So if you have questions, please put a Q colon in front of your questions. Makes them easier for me to see. And then participate. Give me comments, ideas, suggestions that you may have as we go through. The ideas that I had, the topics I wanted to cover with building relationships is setting the tone, greetings, vulnerability, managing engagement, building class culture, conversations, and then ultimately how all of this leads to classroom management. So again, if you have any questions, just put a Q colon in front of them. It makes them easier for me to see on my screen. And I see we've got people here from YouTube. We've got people here from Facebook. Actually, the Facebook people are winning out over the YouTube. Okay, let me grab a drink really quick. So, let's talk building relationships. This is one of my key things to do with my students, to get them as involved in my class as possible. Obviously, I do it as much in the target language as possible, but my main goal, especially in the first 2 to 3, maybe even 4 weeks, depending on the classes, is to get to know my students and build this relationship. I cannot teach them effectively without having this relationship. And so in order to get the relationship, I've got to go through all of these steps to make it a safe place, making it a welcome place, a warm place for them to come, a safe haven for them. Whatever goes on outside of the classroom, it ends when you come in the door. I work really hard to make all my kids happy. So when I see them coming in the room and they look like they have something on their mind, I quickly try to engage them and try to get them to change their mindset, at least for the class period. Not always possible, but I do try as hard as I can. I work really hard to try to make them laugh in some kind of way. So the first step is setting the tone. And I know a lot of people do a lot of different things to set the tone, and I'll ask you what you guys do in just a moment. But for me, one of the things that's really important is I play music when they come in. We have a 3-minute passing period because we're a middle school. And so during that 3 minutes, I play music. Now, I know that's not uncommon. Many of you play music. But what I do differently than a lot of other teachers is I don't play culturally appropriate music. So I teach Spanish. I don't play Spanish music. And the reason being is I want them to to know me a little bit. I don't generally listen in my outside hours to Spanish music. I listen to alternative rock. So I have a school appropriate playlist where there are no E's on any of the songs that are from Spotify. And then I play my Spotify music in my classroom in between classes. And I do this, as I said, they get a little bit of insight who I am. We're going to do Spanish music in class. So there's not a real reason I need to do it in the 3 minutes between for my personal thought. I'd rather use this time to build some kind of a connection with my students. Some of my students like my music and they comment and they ask about it. Like, I like that song. Who sings that one? Or I have that one too. Or I like that group. But also, especially in the later years when more kids are getting into the rap and what's the actual word for that? Don't call it rap anymore. I forgot. I'm so old. I forgot what they call it. But it's not. It's rap's included in it, but it's not all rap. They listen to that. I just had it and I lost it again. I don't know. Those kids are more than my alternative kids. It used to be my alternative kids were more than those kids. Now in the last 5 or 6 years, it's kind of switched. So then they complain about my music. Oh, that's an awful song. That's an awful song. But it brings us into a conversation spot. And so that's so very important for me, is to have that in there. It gives us something to talk about, whether they like my music, they don't like my music, or they're indifferent. We share that connection as they're walking into my classroom. They're making comments about the music that's on there. Some kids try to turn off my music as a joking kind of a way. But it brings up a conversation and it sets a tone. Most regular classrooms, math, social studies, English, they're boring. And they don't play any music to welcome their kids in. They just have them come on in. So I want them to know that my language class is a special place and we're different right from the beginning. So I want to set that tone, and I do that from the very first day of school. That music is playing. It's playing loud. My door is open, and that will lead us into our greetings, which we'll talk about in just a moment. What do you guys do to set the tone for the year, for the class period, for the week? What do you guys do to set that tone with your students? Let me know in the comments or the chat. And remember to like the stream so that other people can see it. Otherwise, Facebook and YouTube kind of hide it. So if you're enjoying it, please like it. And we're just waiting for those comments to come on through. Takes a moment. There's a delay. Margarita says, music as well. Sometimes Senor Woolley. Awesome. Music is a great unifier between adults and kids. It's one thing that we all enjoy and have in common. Elodie says, welcome each kid by name at the door every day as much as possible. Yep, we're going to get to that in greetings, Elodie. Awesome. Joanne says, my students often try to change the song on my classroom Alexa. Mine do too. Mine's a Google that we use, and they do too. They kind of put on funny songs. Or I forgot what was the Kids Bop or something they were putting on at one time. They think it's really funny. Greg says, I sell the class. I talk about how mine will be different from anything they've probably done. And the most important thing is that they learn about each other in the target language. Awesome. That is so key. The language, I know that's what we're getting paid to do, is teach language. But I can teach language multiple ways. And so content is important. And it's about what the kids want to talk about, what they want to learn about. That's how I want to bring in the language in. So teaching them how to be good human beings, good world citizens, how to treat each other, all of that can be done in the target language. And so I'm hitting two birds with one stone. And to be honest, although many of our kids will go away using their language for lifelong, many of them won't, but they will remember some of the other long-lasting lessons we gave them. How to be world citizens, how to look at the world through a different lens, how to appreciate people and treat people. Those things will last longer for many of our students than the language instruction. Joanne says, I especially like live music videos, especially the playing for change songs and my husband's group, among others. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Great. So these are all different ways, and a lot of us are using music in some way to set the tone. And that is awesome because, as I said, that brings generations together. Greg says, P4C songs are always amazing. So yes. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about greetings. Elodie already touched upon it, but I greet every kid at the door. It is a school requirement, but I've been doing it long before it became a school requirement. And even though it is a school requirement, not every teacher does it. In my little wing, it's 2 of us out of 5 who do it almost every period, every day. And the other ones are sporadic, if at all. But it's so important to greet your kids and welcome them into your space on a daily basis. And I am horrible with names. It has nothing to do with students. I've always been bad with names. And it's not just names of people, it's names of products. I'll forget the name for Coke. I'll forget the name for Pepsi. You've already seen me forget about a couple of the names already. It's something that is part of me. I warn my kids about it all the time. But what I challenge myself to do is to welcome every kid by name as they come in. It takes me a while to learn their names, but I try. And once I do, I acknowledge them by name every single time. And then I try to engage them in some type of comment. Margarita says, I do, but I struggle to remember all the names. I have more than 200 students. I'm with you. I have the same problem. And I have found in the last couple of years since distance learning that Flipgrid has helped me tremendously. When I have my kids do a weekly Flipgrid exit ticket, I can watch those and their names pop up and I learn them much quicker that way. So that's helped me, but I still struggle. And if they change their hair from one day to the next, I'm lost. I have no idea. For whatever reason, hair is an identifier for me. Greg says we have greeting of the week in the target language as well as goodbye of the week. I do greetings and passwords, and a student is in charge of the goodbyes. Awesome. Something also that Bryce Hedstrom does, he always says in the target language, thank you for learning, and the kids say thank you for teaching us. So it's another way to engage them. But as I was saying, I greet them all at the door by the name, and I try to say something else to them. I don't say things like, I need to talk to you after class, we need to talk about your grade, your behavior yesterday was something bad. Nothing. I want to start fresh. I want to start in a clean slate. There are other times I can bring that up. Here is not that time. I want to bring them in. I want to be welcome. I will comment on their clothing. They're wearing something cool that day, or they got their hair looks really nice that day, or they've got a good smile on their face or a great energy, something to that effect. If I see that they're not, that they don't have a smile on their face, they look upset, then I ask them about that. They don't have to share their personal things, but say, oh, you're having a bad day today? Well, and try to do something to change it for them. Sometimes they need an ear, and they'll tell you, and other times they don't, or that you just acknowledge that you noticed them, number one, and number two, that you noticed that they're not in their normal sorts. And so it's really important. I will often I don't do so much of the handshakes anymore, but we do fist bumps, we do high fives when they come in. I want it to be a celebratory. I want it to be a fun place for them to come in because it makes it a different place. They know when they get to my classroom, it is not going to be the same as any other classroom on campus. And I want to instill that right away. And I do that right away with those greetings. And not only can I see right away if there is an issue with the kid, I can apply this right away. So if I see that there's an issue with a kid coming up, then I can address that in class. I can maybe not ask them as many questions because they're not in the mood today, or they need positivity. They just had a bad experience in their class, so we need some positivity brought in the class. I would not know these things about my students if I was sitting at my desk waiting for them to come in. Sitting at the door, or I stand at the door and greeting them, I get to see every kid as they walk in, every face. I make eye contact, and I get a sense of who they are that day at that moment. And then I can adjust what I need to do with those kids at that time. Any other ideas for greetings? I know a lot of people use passwords. Some people have different handshakes for different students, or a secret handshake per student or per class. That's way beyond my brain power. So I don't do that. I just do a simple fist bump, elbow bump, or a high five. We're just waiting for those comments to come in. It always has a little bit of a delay. While we're waiting, I will go ahead and talk to the next topic here. That will be vulnerability. So this is a hard one for me. We need to be vulnerable in our classrooms. The kids need to see us as actual human beings and not just teachers who live in the school. Greg says, I try to engage them in whatever extracurricular might have happened in English, and then we do it in the target language again after class starts. Awesome. Yes, that's going to come up. We're going to talk about that in my conversation section. But yes, that's exactly what I do as well. I want to engage them in any extracurricular activities they did, talk about those things, and we'll talk about that when we come up to conversations. Great idea, Greg. Thank you. So being vulnerable, they need to see us as human beings, because many students don't see us that way. They think, I don't know why, but I never thought this as a kid, but many kids think that we just don't have a personal life, that school is everything for us. And we need to be a little bit vulnerable. I often say, as a teacher, we have to leave our dignity at the door. I am naturally an introvert by nature. When I get done with school, I am done seeing people for the rest of the day. I want to get home and I want to hide because I have used all my energy faking being an extrovert, because I am definitely not. I like to be alone with my dogs, reading a book, watching a TV show or a movie. I'm not one to hugely socialize. I like small groups of people, not large groups of people. So I'm very vulnerable in the classroom. I have to put on a different persona in the classroom. It's not entirely a fake persona, but it is a persona of what I would be if I were an extrovert. So I do things that I would never do in my real life. On Tuesdays, I have a taco costume. I put on the taco costume for Taco Tuesday. My kids know that I have this every time. Spirit Days, I go all out for Spirit Days. partially because most of my kids are 8th graders, and as they get towards the 8th grade, they're less spiritly inclined, and I want our grade to win the Spirit Award at the end of the year. So to encourage them to dress up and play the part in the spirit, I dress up. So it's really common in our school to put on colored tutus. Each grade level has a different color. 8th grade is blue, 7th grade is white, 6th grade is yellow. I put on my blue and white tutu because I have some 7th graders. And I have hats, and I have capes, and I have shirts, and I put whatever I can do to exaggerate the spirit days. Whatever they are, I'm all in, whatever I can do so that I'm trying to engage them. And it makes me very vulnerable. So that's why I said I'm losing my dignity at the door. I would never do these kind of extravagant things in my real life. I'm not a big Halloween fan. I don't dress up for that. It's just not me. But I do for school. I do it for the school time, and I always pull it right off when the last bell rings. So when I go home, I am completely normalized again. The only spirit day that I truly, truly enjoy is pajama day. I love wearing pajamas to school. I wish that they were every day. But other than that, I just follow the spirit days, and I make myself very vulnerable with a persona. I'm not generally a funny person, but I try to crack jokes in class to make it more fun. I exaggerate things that I would normally do, kind of, just projecting this persona out there that's not exactly who I am, but it's not entirely different either. It's a stretch of who I am. So that by being vulnerable, by being goofy, my kids' affective filter and stress level overall lowers, and they feel it's okay to be goofy too. When we do our songs, I dance. I dance ridiculously. I try to do the dances that the kids are talking about. I can't do them at all, and we just have fun with it. We laugh at it, and it just brings down the affective filter. So being vulnerable is something that we all have to do in some way, shape, or form to make kids a little bit more comfortable. We're asking them to be vulnerable learning a new language because they know they can't express themselves they want to. They know that they're going to make mistakes and they're going to be embarrassed about making those mistakes. They know they're going to say funny sentences that we're all going to laugh with them, not at them. So they're vulnerable just coming into our class. It's not something that many of the kids are experts in, especially not at the beginning. Not like if it's PE where there are kids who are athletically inclined and are good at PE when they walk in, and there are kids who are good at math, and there are kids who are good at social studies. But languages, especially in level 1, it's all brand new for them. So everybody starts at this low baseline, and they're very vulnerable. So by exposing our vulnerability, it makes them a little bit more comfortable. How do any of you express your vulnerability with your students? Fix my chair here, sorry. My cushion was sliding off. Margarita says, whoops, let me get there. I have to work on it, but I love the idea of being vulnerable. Yes, it's something I have to work at every day, and that is what exhausts me the most, I think, through my school day. Greg says much in the same way. Sing, dance, crack bad jokes, talk about my day. I talk about my experiences as I learn new things. Absolutely. Learning something new. One thing I did during COVID when we were all locked down, I learned to ride a one wheel. If you don't know what that is, it is like a go-kart tire with two platforms on either side. It will balance you forward and backward, but you have to balance it left and right. And you ride it like a skateboard, but it's one solid tire. It can go up to 25 miles per hour. And oh my gosh, it took me a long time because I don't do board sports. I don't snowboard. I don't surf. I don't skateboard. So this was completely new to me. And I filmed my experiences, my falling, all that stuff. And the kids had really a lot of fun laughing at me with that. So I talked about how, I'm learning something new. And I was, 49 when I was doing that? I was a 49-year-old learning how to do this thing for the first time. And, I made myself look goofy. I eventually learned how to ride it and stay on it for a little bit until I had a bad injury. But it's still something I enjoy doing. So showing them new experiences, awesome. Yeah, my kids always laugh at my jokes. They say they're dad jokes, and I'm like perfectly okay with that. I also make jokes about myself all the time because it's okay to laugh at yourself. Alicia says, students like to hear stories in the target language about my cat's bad behavior. Awesome. That's funny. That is great. I love that. My kids always ask me about stories too, like my first date, my prom, all those kinds of things. And then I tell them in the target language and I make it as comprehensible as possible. And it's so funny. They're like, we didn't do anything we were supposed to do. And I'm like, we did everything we were supposed to do because my only goal in class any day is to speak in the target language as much as possible and make it comprehensible. So if they're more interested in what, my first date when I was in high school, and I can do that in the target language, then that's a home run. Their attention is right there. It's in the target language. They're working really hard to understand what I'm saying. And it's a win-win, especially because they think they pulled one over on me. Joanne says, I often play music while they're working individually or in groups. I do dancing around the room. I'm not a good dancer, but I try to be light and laugh and show joy. Too often when kids come in filled with sadness, death of a family member, pet, etc., I cry along with them. Yes, it gets really sad. Yes, empathy. That's another good thing to teach our kids is empathy. A lot of kids don't have empathy anymore, especially with all the social media going on. It's removed the human element. They're no longer connecting with a person, they're connecting with a screen. And that takes away the humanality of it. I just made up a word there, humanality. Okay, our next topic is going to be managing engagement. Now, I never knew about this consciously. Subconsciously, I did. I knew it because I did it instinctively. But talking to elementary teachers is where I learned about it consciously, where I'm like, really? Oh, I guess I do that. Elementary school teachers do this, have this technique, this skill, that's a better word, skill down. Managing engagement. They're with the kids all day long. 5 hours. 1 hour a day is they're like in some other like PE or music or somewhere where that's their prep period. But generally they are with them all day long. And they have to manage the engagement. If the kids are hyper, they need to be calm. And that will calm the kids. If the kids are way too calm and not very engaged, you need to raise up the engagement. You need to be more animated. As I said, I have naturally done this without realizing what I was doing. Teachers always talk about, oh, my first period is so boring, they're still so asleep. I have never had that experience in 20 years of teaching. My first periods are not asleep. I had one class a few years ago where I was worried because I'm like, oh my gosh, they're just lumps on the log. I cannot do this all year long. They're going to have to wake up. And so I picked up my energy. I am there, and I don't want to scream here because it'll be really loud through the speakers, but I go, Buenos días, clase. ¿Cómo están ustedes? I'm really animated. I'm really loud. They can't be quiet. I get them animated. Everything I do, we get to a song and I go, Levántense, vamos a cantar. Stand up, we're going to sing. I sing it. I'm loud. I'm obnoxious to increase their energy level. But after lunch, those kids are they're on the sugar highs. They just came back from lunch. They were out on the basketball courts or doing something. I need to calm them down. So I am more quiet. I will go, Buenos dias, clase. And they're like, we can't hear you. And I'm like, Buenos dias, clase. And it should be Buenos tardes because it's after lunch, but you get what I mean. Actually, sometimes lunch is before noon. Anyway, no, neither here nor there. But I play this game of managing engagement I mimic what I want to see in my students. And as I said, this is a skill that elementary school teachers have mastered. They have to master it because little kids can go from being really low energy to very high energy. They come from very high energy classes like PE and they now need to calm down because it's math time or it's reading time. And so they have to play this. So you have to mimic the energy that you want to see in your class. If you have a really quiet class and you need them to step it up, then you need to step it up. If you have a really rambunctious class, high energy class, and you need them to settle it down, then you need to settle it down. They will mirror what you do. It's really funny how it works, but they absolutely do. Do any of you have any ideas or comments or what you do to manage that energy level in your students? Greg says, I try to let kids have their own energy and not wear myself out so long as we are all engaged. Awesome. Whatever works for you. I will say teaching with comprehensible input is exhausting. But my saving grace is at the end of the day, I'm going home. I don't have a stack of papers to grade or tests to grade or diaries to read or any of those kinds of things. The English teachers always have a stack of papers to grade. Math teachers, oh my gosh, having to grade all that work, not just the answers to see if it's right or wrong, but to go through every kid's process to see how they made their mistakes. Oh my God, I couldn't imagine. So yes, I am exhausted at the end of the day, but I would rather give all that energy to my students than to waste it on grading papers or doing other stuff like that. So yes, I completely get what you're saying, Greg. Alicia says, if they come in all riled up, we start with a fast-paced TPR or a chorus of If You're Happy and You Know It in Latin. This uses their energy up. Then we transition to quieter activities. Awesome. I'll often, if they're really rambunctious, I usually have them read in the beginning Or sometimes we'll do an activity outside too to make them expel that energy outside. Like you said, we'll play a quick brain break at the beginning of class instead of, in the middle of class. And so I'll do that. We have a quad right outside my room, and we'll go out there and hit the beach ball around a few moments, or play with some pool noodles or something like that, to have some fun, just to get that energy out, like you said. Awesome, awesome. So the next thing is one of the things I really enjoy doing, and that is building class culture. I treat all my classes, we have 7 periods, and I teach 6, usually sometimes all 7 periods a day. And I treat all of my classes like a giant family that can't eat dinner all at the same time. So things that happen in one class, I'm going to talk about with another class. I share that. So the stories are all, and the kids will go, we heard this happen in period 3. Tell us about it. Or what went on in period 2? We heard about that too. And we share all of that stuff. Class jokes get spread amongst everybody, so everybody can share in that. Stories get built. Everybody seems, even though we're a relatively large middle school, about 1,000 students, and they come from all over the place, not even in the same district. We're an IB school, so some kids will come out of district so they can participate in IB. And they're not even zoned for us, because some of the other middle school areas that are in our city, they should be going to another middle school. They want to come to ours because it's IB. So a lot of these kids did not go to the same elementary school, and they probably will not go to the same high school. So for 3 years, they're together. But they get to know who they are. And so if I talk about the football star so-and-so in period 1, even though he's not in that class, everybody knows who he is. Or the cool skateboarder that I have in 5th period, they know who that person is. And so we build this class culture of stuff that comes up. If we have a really good character that comes up in period 1, I introduce them to the other periods, and they might like them better than their own character, and they might want to adopt that character into their stories as well. So it's really important for me to build that class culture. We have our little jokes. We have our little situations. Years later, kids will be talking about it. They'll, message me on Instagram, and they'll say something like, Profe, remember that day? Or can we come up and meet? We'd like, so-and-so and so-and-so. And they're using their nicknames that they had way back when that I barely even remember. It's been so long. But it's amazing when you build a class culture, you build a family. And then kids are able to be more vulnerable. They'll open up, and they feel safe in that family. And some of these kids, let's be honest, don't have real families outside of school. So this might be the only pleasant place they are. And it may be, school might be the only pleasant place, but it also might be just your class, the one period a day that they have where they feel safe and comfortable to be who they are. That could be your class. That's building that class culture. How do you guys build class culture? I'm loving this delay here. It's funny, it's usually a longer delay on Facebook than on YouTube. Elodie says, we start each semester with card talk. Every student gets their time to shine, and it shows they are all important to our class community. Awesome. I do something similar. We usually have a question that we work with for everybody to do, multiple questions for level 3. But yes, I do something like that. Spend about 2-3 weeks on that right at the beginning. Awesome. Greg says, I have a puppet character and I interact with and have kids interact with. We do March Music Madness, lots of group think, pair, share. Awesome. I have a couple puppets too. I also have hats. I have funny little hats. It started at NTPRS in San Antonio, and I don't know what year that was. It might have been 2010, something like that. And someone found a crazy hat store. I never knew these things existed. And so we started collecting, a lot of us teachers from that conference started collecting these crazy hats. And so I have like at least 50 or 60 of these hats. I now buy them on Amazon. The crazy hat store, I guess, is no longer there in San Antonio. But I buy them on Amazon. They're about $10, $12. I've got tons of them all over the place. And they hang in the front of my room, and my kids love these hats. And one time I was standing out my room greeting all the kids. And then I come into the classroom, and all my kids are sitting there all well-behaved, but with a hat on their head. They all just took them up there. So it's just really funny what you can do. I have stuffed animals in my room as well. I call it where they sit is my zoo. We use them for stories or for silent reading. When I'm reading to my kids in kindergarten day, they can snuggle with a stuffed animal. If they're feeling bad, I'll give them a stuffed animal to hold for a while. All those kinds of things. Greg says he also does persona especial or special person interviews. I do that as well. Joanne says, from day one, we stand in a circle and recite a Mayan poem called In Lakeshalakin. I can't pronounce that, so I apologize. It goes, you are my other me. If I do harm to you, I do harm to myself. If I love you, I love and respect. If I love and respect you, I love and respect myself. Then we thank each other for being there. Before we start the poem, we discuss what's going on with each other's student at school, in the country, or world. Sometimes the discussion is big fun, other times very serious, but they quickly understand that our room is a safe place. Absolutely, that's so very important. I remember, I want to say it's 2013-14 or 2014-15. I can't remember. It's when Russia invaded and annexed part of the Ukraine the first time. We have a lot of Slavic students in our area, Russian, Ukrainian, and a variety of Slavic students in our area. And prior to that invasion, the first one where they annexed, was it Crimea? They annexed Crimea back then. If you asked my kids, yes, thank you, Joanne. When they asked my kids what they were, they all would say Russian, even though they might have been Ukrainian. They would just say Russian. But when that happened, that divided them. And so now we had the Russians and we had the Ukrainians. And we talked about that in the target language, but that's something that was important to us because it was happening, even though it was happening thousands of miles away from us, it was happening to our students as well because of their heritage. And it was really, really important for them to talk about those things. So yes, Joanne, world events are so very important, even if they're not culturally relevant to what we're teaching. Again, because we're world language teachers, we can teach anything as long as it's in the target language and we're hitting a standard. I can show any Disney movie and not get in trouble. I am teaching a standard as long as I'm teaching it's in Spanish. Because it's realia, it's authentic resources. We're supposed to show movies and such like that. So that's the beauty of what we teach. So my next topic, and Greg talked about this earlier with conversations. I'm always wanting to strike up a class conversation that includes my students. If I can't find something natural to talk about, I have a reserve of conversation questions that I can use. They're my conversation starters. I have a list of about 70 or so of these conversation starters that will get me through the whole year. But before I use those, when I'm greeting my students at the door, I'm looking for things to talk about. Maybe a kid's got a cool t-shirt, or a new pair of shoes, or a new haircut, or I know that they play volleyball and there was a volleyball game last night, or we have ballroom dance at our school and there was a ballroom dance recital the night before, or our art students had a art display going on, or a lot of our art students, their final project of last year was picking a wall in our outdoor. Because we're in California. When you walk out of your classroom, you are outside. It's very different for the people in the Midwest and East Coast. It was different for me because I grew up in Michigan and I came here. But when I walk out of my classroom, I am outside. The rain will come down right upon my head. So on the outside walls, kids would the art kids in groups would pick a wall and they painted a beautiful mural. So we could talk about their murals. We went and did a mural walk and talked about those murals out there in Spanish. It's something that's fun that you can do. So I'm always looking for things that I can talk about with my kids in a conversation. And as I said, if I can't find anything as I'm looking at them, I don't see anything I can really talk about. There were no sporting events or extracurricular events the other day. There was no sporting games on TV or something like that. Or a popular show that I know everybody watches wasn't on. Then I have my backup with my conversation starters that I have. And they're always crazy little topics like, how many sloths can fit in your bedroom? Nobody cares. It's just a fun thing to talk about. Or how many Hydro Flasks, because that's a popular thing at my school, can fit in the gym? And all the crazy answers. There are some kids who just like guessing, and some kids are trying to figure out the math. It is funny. What would you do if questions? What do you prefer, this or that questions? So a lot of different things that we talk about that I have with the conversation starters. But I first, as I said, I try to find some way to bring in something I noticed or I know about students into the conversations. What kinds of things do you talk about in your classes? Alicia says sports and pets. Oh, that's awesome, Alicia. You just reminded me of something else that some of my teammates do. They will ask kids to share a picture of them doing something over the weekend or their pet and email it to them. And they'll put it into a slideshow and use that for conversation day. So that's a great way to do that. So the kids will take pictures, at their sporting event or with their dog or their cat or their goldfish or their turtle, whatever. If they hung out with friends, they take that in there. So that's a lot of fun things. Christine says weekend chat, usually places and definitely pets. Yes, pets are a very popular topic. We're going to pop these up here. Greg says, in fact, let me edit this. It's easier to read if I edit. So bear with me just a second while I fix this and make it smaller. I guess it's not going to let me go like I wanted to do. Okay, we'll just leave it. So Greg says, I have adapted dozens of memes, especially those about food, and we discuss. What do you eat barbecue sauce on? What's the best ice cream to get from the ice cream truck? which is a better fast food restaurant. I have very similar of those as well. I have, in California, one of the famous restaurants, the fast food, is In-N-Out Burgers. It's not my favorite. It's okay. I prefer Fat Burger or Five Guys. So we'll do that question. Do you prefer In-N-Out or Five Guys? Or do you prefer Twizzlers or Red Vines? What's your favorite flavor of ice cream? Yes, all those kinds of. What's your favorite fast food restaurant? What's your favorite sit-down restaurant? What's your favorite restaurant to take food out? Which restaurants do you like to go through the drive-through? I ask a lot of those things. Yes, Greg, awesome. And Joanne says, I'm excited for this year. I finally got my class assignments the other day. Woohoo! I'll have Spanish 3, Honors 4, Honors 5, and AP Language. So I'll be able to go into greater depth than mine. My preps were all over the place. I'm going to be using Huelas 1 and 2 as my main topics for the year. Lots about the environment. That is awesome, awesome, awesome. And I've heard great things about Huelas. Joanne says, I'm hoping I'll be able to have my puppy in class this year. The new student council presses working admin to bring dogs back. Kids love to make the campus dog characters in stories. Awesome. Yes, I wish my school would do that. One time at my school, we had an escape dog, but it didn't have any identification on it. It might have had a chip, but there's no collar on it. So it was a little Chihuahua. It was running around campus before school started, and one of the kids brought it into my classroom. And we're not supposed to have dogs or any of them on the campus. So we called animal control, but they couldn't come to pick it up for a few hours. So we kind of snuck it in my room and said, okay, nobody tell because, we'll get in trouble. Our principal wouldn't have minded, but the assistant principal was a real stickler for rules and would get upset. So it was our secret. And they named him Picasso, a mashup between the two Spanish words small and cheese, because kids like cheese and he was small, so they called him Picasso. That was the name they named the dog. We had him in our room for a few hours before animal control came. But then I got the lecture from my assistant principal saying, what if the dog was aggressive and bit a student, or what if a student was allergic to the dog, or da-da-da. And I know the risk. It was a very friendly dog. If I had thought any aggressiveness was going to come, I would not have done it, or I would have separated them from the kids, but it was none of that. It was just a small little Chihuahua. It was lost, and they got it back to its owners. But yes, I kind of snuck in that way. I'm an animal person in general, so I will break those kind of rules all the time. Awesome, awesome, awesome. And we just got a few minutes left, but our last topic today will be classroom management. How does this all tie into classroom management? It's really simple. When you have good relationships with your students, the less likely they are going to act up for you. I mean, they're going to act up. Let's be honest. They're kids. They make mistakes all the time. But they're more likely to regret what they did. They're more likely to respond to redirection. They're more likely to respond to just an evil look at them because you have this relationship with them. And I tell them, no matter how angry I might be in the moment, when the bell rings, it is over for me. I'm done with it. I start every day brand new and fresh because I don't want to hold grudges. Life is too short. And that's another lesson to teach kids, that we shouldn't hold grudges, that we should forgive and forget when possible to do so. Give every kid a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth chance. But when I've taken all this time to build relationships with the students, make them feel safe and comfortable, and they can be themselves to a point. I mean, obviously they can't be themselves and run around the classroom with their head chopped off, but they can be who they really are. They're less likely to act up. The kinds of kids who usually act up are two types usually. One, they're bored. You're not engaging them. And so we work really hard on engagement. If I'm always teaching to the mid and low and never teaching to the high, then those high kids, they're going to get bored, and then they're going to act out in some way. Usually because they're top kids, they're not going to act out in malicious ways, but usually it comes out and they're going to have conversations with their neighbors. That's what's going to happen. So that's one type. The other type who are averse to school. Why are they averse to school? Because they have felt too many failures along the way and too few successes. So they say, what's the point? We start seeing this more in upper elementary towards middle school and high school. In elementary is where they have the most power to turn that around. Kids need to feel success, even in small doses. If they feel too much failure, then they're going to shut down. And that's usually what happens for some of our kids when they get to middle school or even high school. They're already shut down because they've had too many failures and they just have given up. So those kids also will be the ones to act out. So what do? For those kids, I find a way to positively engage them in class. In that card talk that I think it was Elodie who talked about, those are the kids I start with when we have conversations. I will start with those kids, those angry, disassociated with school kids. I want to start with them. I want to make them feel smart. I want to make them feel popular. I want to make them feel successful right away, because then I get them on my side. And often, and if we have a parent conference, the way our school does parent conferences, it's either called by the parent or it's called by a teacher. If a teacher calls it, then all the teachers have to come in. If a parent calls it, all the parent teachers come in too. And then we usually go around the room. We talk about positive things for the kid and then the issues that we might be seeing with the student in our classrooms. And for many of those kids, I don't have the issues. So I get to say, awesome kid, no problems, doing great in my class. Great participation, doesn't give me any behavior issues. And other teachers are like, what are you doing in your class? What are you feeding him to keep him, behaved in class? So it's building all those relationships and making it a safe place and a place they feel successful and popular and feeling smart, and that's when they will do better for you. What are your thoughts about student relationships and classroom management? Joanne says, I had a group of lacrosse boys who were late admits last year. December, March entries, all boarding students. Their only peer group was in their sport. They started hanging around the student center on weekends. For those who don't know, Joanne teaches at an international boarding school. They started hanging around the student center on weekends whenever I was on duty just to sit and talk with me. They were so obnoxious in class, but once they got to know me outside of class, they had much more buy-in to the class. The personal aspect is what it's all about. That is so true, Joanne. It's one of the things that I do, and many teachers think I'm crazy. I open my lunchroom up to kids. I couldn't during COVID, but once COVID is kind of lifted, they're in there. A lot of my kids come in and hang out. And again, it's that showing you're a real human. And the kids who sometimes are jerks in class are very different one-on-one or in this particular kind of an atmosphere. Exactly, when they know you outside of class. Greg says, I don't allow negative talk, especially self-talk. I think that goes a long way. Absolutely, keep it all positive. I have a student whose job it is just to point out kids I should praise when I get too busy and stressed and don't do it like I should. Awesome. That is a great idea. In fact, I'm going to write that down because I do not have that job and I like that one already. Praise kid. I like that. Absolutely. I like that. One of the things I do, and And I'll talk about one of these live sessions in the future about participation points. But my kids can buy privileges, and the cheapest thing I offer is a good email home. And what I love about it, because some kids, yeah, you're stretching to find something to write positive about, let's be honest. And what I love about it is they fill out a form. It costs 25 points, which are easy to get. They fill out a form, the person they want me to email, the email address, what day they want me to email, and what they want me to say. And so the great thing about that is I tell them I will say just about anything as long as it's truthful. I will not lie. I will not stretch the truth. So if you want me to say you're a great student in class, but you're not, I'm not going to say that. So the kids use this to their advantage. They got in trouble in one class, so now they need something positive, so they'll use their points to buy that. Or they want something special, so they'll, to butter up their parents, they use them like that. I had one kid, he was a great kid, but he had ADHD and some other learning disabilities and was a behavior issue in class, wasn't the smartest kid in class. And so he couldn't put anything down on there about class because behavior-wise, he knew he wasn't good. Academic-wise, he wasn't very good. And so he told me what he wanted me to do is, and this is when I did phone calls home. I don't do phone calls home anymore. It's too complicated to get a hold of the parent. So it's easier to do emails. But when I was doing phone calls, he told me that he wanted me to call his mom and tell her that his hair was on point that day. So I looked at his hair and it looked fine to me. So I said, okay, it's not a lie. I will do that. So after school, I called right away. And she picks him up from school every day. And I could hear him in the background in the car as I was talking. And I'm like, yes, this is Mr. Benedict. I'm your son's Spanish teacher. And the first thing out of her mouth is, what did he do? I'm like, he hasn't done anything. I'm just calling to tell you that his hair was on point today. And she's like, what did he do? I'm like, he hasn't done anything. He's not in trouble at all. I just want to let you know that his hair was perfectly brushed and looked really nice today. And she's like, what did he do? I'm like, he's done nothing. I'm going to hang up the phone now. And as I'm hanging up the phone, I hear her saying, is the principal going to be calling me? And I'm like, no. And I hang up the phone. He comes in the next day beaming from ear to ear. And why is he beaming from ear to ear? Because they were supposed to do something really boring after school. He had run some errands. But instead, because his mom never gets good phone calls home, she took him to Leatherby's, which is an ice cream parlor near our school. And they went and had ice cream sundaes together instead of doing the errands and then went home afterwards. So he got out of doing errands with his mom and he got ice cream for that call. He was so happy, and it was such a great experience. I would never have really found something to say positive about this kid. I liked the kid, but he did cause problems in the class, and he didn't do his work. So it would have been a kid I would have had trouble to do that. So yes, I'll come right back to you, Christine, in a second here. Greg says, lots of laughs. I've done that. I often get hilarious results too. Yes, it is so funny when they do that. They have some of the funniest things they want me to say. Christine says, only my honors kids want to come for lunch. The more challenging kids don't come. Not sure what I'm not doing to reach those kids. Well, I will tell you what starts off is my 8th graders. That's why I teach most. I have mostly 8th graders. And then I have about 2/3 8th graders and about 1/3 7th graders. The 7th graders generally don't come in. But then the 8th graders will come in that are my students. But they tend to bring in their friends that I don't even have as students, and they come in. So I don't know. I don't do anything special. It's the nature of the kids who come in, who bring their friends along with them. So it is, I will say the majority of my kids are the top kids, but I have a mixture too, and they bring, it's just who their friends are and who they bring in. Greg says, one thing I do, I make it a point to call every parent guardian in the first 3 weeks just to get them on my side. You have to create culture with them, fam, too, for your own sake. Absolutely. Now, I don't do it with phone calls. I have too many students, and what I plan is a 5-minute phone call turns into a half an hour. I just don't have the time for that, or playing phone tag back and forth, because even if I leave a message, there's no reason to return this phone call. They will all try to go call me back, and the next day I have all these messages on my phone. I send out emails to every parent, every family of my kids the first week of school to get them out. I can do that much more quickly than I can do phone calls. And I usually, and I got this from another teacher, and then I read about it in a book as well. I usually ask them to share something funny or embarrassing about their kid that's okay to share in class. You know, they usually tell me things when they were toddlers or something like that, or some funny thing the kid did, or fell off a boat into the water or something like that. And so that makes it fun. And Greg has a very good point. Not every kid wants to hang out with an adult. You can't take it personally. Some of those kids are the ones I can't get rid of years later. That is true. That is true. I get so many kids who come back and try to visit. Or, once they see what's going on in your classroom, then it spreads. I mean, I get some kids, I'm like, I don't even know half the kids in my room anymore because they're not my students. I've never had them. And then I have 7th graders. As I said, most won't come into the classroom because it's full of 8th graders, but they make a mental note for next year that they're going to come in the following year. I just make it a safe place. That's all that I do is I make it a safe place for kids to hang out, especially kids who don't have anybody to eat lunch with. They can come in, eat lunch in there. My only rule is there's no roughhousing, and you got to make sure all your food goes in the garbage. So that is all that I have for you today. I got through all my talking points. Anybody else have anything they would like to add? Questions, comments? Before I let everybody go. Elise says, I have a small bin with plastic utensils, plates, and napkins. This often attracts students who forget these essentials. I have them if they ask. I don't put them out because they can get them in our cafeteria. But yes, if kids ask, and I even have extra foods, and when a kid says they forgot a lunch, I have like a soup can or something like that in my cabinet. I've given out, or the microwavable mac and cheese. I've had some of those sometimes too. Greg says, thanks for the ideas. You're so welcome, Greg. Thank you for contributing. Alicia says, I would like to hear how people use greetings and passwords as entry to the door. I don't use passwords. Margarita says, thank you so much. You're welcome. Does somebody who uses passwords want to answer Alicia? She'd like to hear how people use greetings and passwords as they enter the door. I'll tell you how my teammates use passwords, because they do use them. I just don't. I rather just have another connection with them. But they'll assign a password of the week. So it's usually, yes, Bryce's website has got the password information, and he's got a great book on it. Awesome. Yes, you can find those kind of things too. But just briefly, they'll either have a rejoinder or a vocabulary word or a phrase or an expression that someone says something and then it gets replied to. And each kid says the same password and you respond to it, and then they come into the classroom. So let's say you say on Friday, the password for next week is, let me think of one. Lo que sea, whatever. And so my kids come in and they would have to tell me, I go, ¿cuál es la contraseña? What is the password? And then they would have to tell me, lo que sea. And then I let them through. That's how my teammates use them. Christine says, I used passwords last year. Middle school, 6th graders loved it. 8th graders had tongue twisters. I changed weekly. Yeah, they usually change weekly. They are tongue twisters. It's another good one in there. Sometimes you use song lyrics or dichos. How do you say dichos in English? Sayings? I don't know. I can't. There's a word for it. I just can't think of what the word is in English. But that's another thing. The famous sayings that go around, like two birds with one stone, that type of thing. Proverbs, that's what I was looking for. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you. Um, Joanne says, I've been thinking about doing Rejoinder of the Week. I have a bunch on bright little posters on a board in the room, but haven't done much with them yet. Must be more mindful about bringing them in, but not so much as a password. I'll tell you what I love doing with those. I have a set laminated in little cards, and I will pass them out randomly to kids as they walk in, and they have to find a way to get it into the story. Or if we're doing a reading and there's something that's, that is sad, they go, que lastima, and hold up their thing. So that's what I do. I assign them to kids, and they have to find a way to work them into class. I learned that from another teacher. It was from my old department chair, Marcella, and I learned that from her, and I've copied it, and it's been very, very good. Idioms is another word for what I was thinking of. Yes, thank you, Christina. Now all these are really small because of that one. Can I make it bigger? There. It's still not making it bigger. Okay, we got all kinds of things. Sayings, expressions, idioms, dichos. Good idea about rejoinders. Yes, it's really a fun activity. I have like about 10 of them. I give them out randomly to kids, and they just have to find a way to work them in. You can also do it, and I got this from Karen Rowan, funny words that are really hard to get in. You're just doing it to make it funny, like meatballs or belly button. Any of those kind of words, just off the wall words that are not going to come up. They're not vocabulary. We're not trying to teach them as vocabulary, but just giving, your job today is to get meatballs into something that we're doing in class. You've got to find some way for us to get there, and it's really fun. Barbara says, love the card idea. Yeah, it's great. It really does help with engagement, especially during reading. Because that's a more passive activity, and so this kind of gets them up and a little bit more active, and they're focusing. I like to a lot to give these to my kids who have trouble focusing because they have to pay attention to be able to use it, and they get special privileges if they can get it used in the class. Okay, great. I took over another 15 minutes of your time. I so appreciate you being here. Kathy says, do you have favorite classroom jobs that help keep things on track? Christine says, anyone can get free rejoinder signs from TPRS Books. Awesome. I have a job list on my website. If you go to mm.us/resources, and there I have a job list from a previous year. My jobs change so frequently. Thank you, Greg. No problem. Enjoy the rest of your day. So they change because I'll find that this worked really well this year, but not last year, or vice versa. I change them up. I'm like, I don't need that job anymore. Some key ones I have someone who keeps track of class points. I have someone who keeps track of wherever I leave, whatever I had in my hand, because I'm always losing the clicker, a marker, name cards. So their job is to watch whatever I have in my hand and where I put it, so I don't spend so much time looking for it all the time. I have someone who changes the date for me automatically. I have library managers who make sure my library is neat. I have a zookeeper who makes sure my animals are all nice and neat. I have Kathy says, great idea. I always lose the smartboard pencil thing. Yep. I have chair champions. Their job is to put all my chairs back in a nice, they all kind of start to migrate in class. We don't have desks, so we just have the chairs. So there is to make sure all the chairs are back at the end of every class. I have floor fanatics who clean up any big messes off the floor, pick up papers and stuff like that. I have a teacher's assistant who makes copies for me. I don't make copies. And I have an errand runner who runs errands for me, so I don't run the errands. Those are my major jobs. I have a dry erase marker attendant. Lots of laughs. I'm constantly misplacing mine. Yep. That's me. Anything I have in my hand, I'm always losing. So it's always great to have someone whose job is to watch that. That's another thing I will put in there. We got the participation we'll have a live on. Jobs is another one we can have a live on. I don't know what we'll do. Next week will be another weekly live. We'll do it 3:30 Pacific time. You're so very welcome, Kathy. And if any of you have missed this, you can watch the replay. It will be on Facebook and YouTube. And if you liked what you saw today, please click the like buttons either on Facebook or YouTube so they will show the video to other people so other people can see it. And with that, I will say goodbye to all of you, and hopefully some of you will join me next week. I'm not sure what we'll talk about yet, but when I have my ideas, I will send out a notice. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night. Joanne says, thank you so much. These sessions are helping me get motivated. Awesome. I'm so glad. I'm even going to do, when we get closer to, I had an idea to do a back to school boot camp. Some basic things to get ready for school. You're welcome, Alicia. De nada, Barbara. Bitte, Marika. Okay. See you all later. Thank you, everybody. Joanne says, I still haven't cleaned off my desk from last spring. Oh my gosh.